The war had stretched across the stars for years. The coalition of worlds, a loose gathering of alien empires, had been locked in battle against a powerful invading force known as the Orcs. The Orcs were brutal, armored beings who believed conquest was their birthright. Entire planets had fallen to their endless fleets. Humans were newcomers to this grand stage. Their homeworld had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, and yet their courage and strange, unpredictable tactics had caught the attention of the coalition. Many alien races considered humans reckless, even primitive compared to their advanced civilizations. But when the Orcs war threatened all, the coalition accepted the help of human soldiers. Among these was Captain Elias Varan, a soldier of Earth who had already made a name for himself in smaller battles. He was not the strongest warrior, nor the most advanced, but he carried something rare: a sharp mind and the will to never give up, even when defeat seemed certain. The battlefield. The battle that earned him his name took place on the barren moon of Telvaris. The Orcs had launched a sudden strike, landing thousands of troops to seize the moon's rich fuel mines. The coalition forces had been caught unprepared, and their armies were scattered. Elias found himself commanding a mixed group of survivors: a handful of human soldiers, insectoid Thrin warriors, towering Vurok fighters, and a squad of lithe Serendri scouts. They numbered less than 500, while the Orcs marched with more than 3,000. The aliens despaired. The Thrin commander hissed that they should retreat underground and wait for rescue. The Vurok wanted to charge. In one final glorious battle, the Serendri whispered that survival was impossible. But Elias stood firm. "If we run," he said calmly, "they will take this moon, and the coalition will lose the fuel it needs. If we fight the way they expect, we will be crushed. But if we fight like humans, we can win." The others stared at him, confused. Humans were still new to them. What did it mean to fight like humans? Elias drew in the dust with his boot, sketching a plan. He spoke with steady confidence, his voice carrying conviction. "We don't fight them head-on. We bleed them, confuse them, break their confidence. We use the land, the shadows, and every trick we know. They think strength alone will win the day. Let's show them they're wrong." The plan in motion. That night, the human-led force set their traps. The Serendri scouts moved silently, placing explosives along narrow canyons. The Thrin burrowed beneath the soil to create sudden ambush pits. The Vurok stood ready with heavy weapons scavenged from wrecked vehicles. And Elias himself moved among them, encouraging, guiding, reminding them of the greater purpose. He did not sit back like many commanders. He worked beside his soldiers, and this inspired trust. When the Orcs' army advanced the next morning, they marched in perfect lines, confident in their superior numbers. But as they entered the canyon, explosions ripped through their ranks. The ground beneath them collapsed as hidden pits swallowed squads whole. The enemy stumbled, lost formation, and before they could recover, fire rained down from the cliffs. Eerie. Coalition soldiers attacked not as a single unit, but as dozens of small strikes. They hit, vanished, and struck again from another angle. To the disciplined but rigid Orcs, this chaos was unbearable. Elias himself led a daring charge into their supply lines, destroying their fuel reserves. "Cut off their legs," he told his soldiers. "A giant without legs cannot walk." By the second day, the Orcs were desperate. Their commanders ordered reckless assaults, trying to crush the defenders, but the moon's landscape became their enemy. Every canyon, every rock, every shadow hid another trap, another ambush, and always at the center of it all was the human captain who refused to break. The final stand on the third day, the Orcs gathered their strongest warriors for one last push. Over 1,000 armored giants charged toward the coalition's final defense line. Exhausted, battered, and outnumbered, Elias's force prepared for the end. The Vurok wanted to charge into glory, the Serendri wanted to scatter, and the Thrin hissed in despair. But Elias stood before them, dirt-streaked and bloodied, his voice firm. "We are not broken. We are not done. Look at them. They come like a flood. But floods can be turned. All it takes is one wall strong enough to stand. The soldiers looked at him, and for the first time they believed. Not because of their own traditions, not because of their empires, but because of this one human who refused to bow. The battle was brutal. The Carricks slammed into the defense line like a storm. Shields shattered, weapons burned out, warriors fell. But Elias was everywhere, shouting orders, dragging the wounded to safety, rallying broken lines. His courage burned like fire, and his soldiers fought beyond their limits. Then came the turning point. At the height of the clash, Elias ordered the detonation of the last hidden charges buried beneath the ground. The earth shook, and a massive section of the battlefield collapsed, taking hundreds of Carricks with it. The enemy, stunned and leaderless, faltered. And in that moment, Elias called for the final counterattack. Together, humans and aliens surged forward, driving the invaders into retreat. When the dust cleared, the moon was saved. Against all odds, 500 had defeated 3,000. The honor-granted word of the victory spread quickly through the coalition. The alien commanders could hardly believe what they heard. A human, leading a ragtag group, had outsmarted and defeated a force 6 times larger. In the days that followed, the survivors spoke of Elias with awe. The Vurok, who respected only strength, admitted that his cunning was a strength greater than brute force. The Serendri, who prized silence and stealth, praised his ability to weave chaos into victory. Even the cynical Thryn acknowledged that his refusal to despair had saved them all. When Elias was summoned before the Coalition High Council, he expected only thanks. But instead, they granted him a rare and ancient honor. For his courage, declared the Serendri elder. For his wisdom and his unshakable spirit, Captain Elias Varen shall be offered a companion, a gift reserved only for the greatest of champions. There was a stir in the hall. The tradition was old, predating humans' entry into the coalition. Among many alien cultures, a companion was more than just company. It was a sign of loyalty, a symbol of alliance, a bond of honor. Elias bowed his head uncertain. He was a soldier, not a lord. He had never sought reward beyond duty. Yet he could not insult their gift, for it was a mark of highest respect. And so he accepted, unaware that this moment would change the course of his life forever. Closing of Part 1. On that day, the human soldier who had turned the tide of battle was celebrated not just as a warrior, but as a figure of legend. The coalition had seen the strength of humankind, not in machines or numbers, but in spirit, cunning, and the refusal to surrender. And soon, Elias would meet the companion chosen for him, a woman whose presence would lead him into challenges far greater than any battlefield. The true story was only beginning. The great hall of the Coalition Council was silent as Captain Elias Varen stood before the gathered leaders. Tall banners of alien houses hung from the walls, their colors glowing under the light of hovering crystals. Creatures from a dozen worlds filled the chamber, scaled Thryn with glittering carapaces, tall Vurok with broad shoulders, the graceful Serendri with their silver eyes. They had all come to witness the ceremony. Elias felt uncomfortable in the spotlight. He had spent his life as a soldier, not a hero. His armor was still scratched from battle, and he preferred the dust of the battlefield to the polished floors of this chamber. Yet here he stood, honored for a victory that even the most powerful alien generals had failed to achieve. The Serendri elder spoke, her voice clear and musical. Captain Elias Varen of Earth, you have brought honor not only to your kind but to the coalition itself. You fought when others would have fled. You led when others doubted. For this, the council grants you a reward worthy of your courage. Elias bowed his head slightly, uncomfortable. I fought because it was my duty, he said. I needed no reward. But the elder smiled gently. Duty is noble, but honor must still be recognized. And so, we bestow upon you a companion. At her words, the chamber stirred with whispers. Elias frowned slightly, uncertain. He had heard the term but did not truly understand its meaning. A companion was not like a comrade or soldier. It was a tradition among certain alien houses, a bond between warrior and ally, given as the highest form of respect. Before Elias could ask further, the doors of the hall opened. The arrival of Serenia, she walked in with quiet dignity. Her figure was tall and slender, her posture regal. Her skin shimmered faintly, a pale blue hue like the surface of water under starlight. Her eyes glowed a soft violet, intelligent and piercing. A crown of delicate silver markings ran across her temples, symbols of her noble house. She wore a robe of flowing fabric, woven with patterns that shifted as she moved, almost alive with faint light. This was Serenia, daughter of House Talon, one of the noble families of the Serendri. Elias studied her carefully. She did not look timid or fragile. She walked with pride, her chin high, her gaze steady. And yet beneath that calm face, Elias saw something else. Hesitation, maybe even defiance. The elder raised a hand. Serenia of House Talon, by the will of the council, and by the old traditions of our people, you are now bound as companion to Captain Elias Varan of Earth. You will stand at his side, a symbol of unity between our kind. The words fell heavy in the air. Elias could see that Serenia did not bow, nor did she smile. She simply inclined her head, her eyes never leaving his. It was not the look of a servant or a gift. It was the look of someone judging, weighing, deciding what she thought of this man. When the ceremony ended and the council dismissed them, Elias and Serenia were guided to a private chamber. There for the first time they stood alone. First meeting. The silence stretched between them. Elias, unsure of what was expected, finally broke it. I suppose introductions are in order, he said. I am Elias Varan, human, soldier. I imagine. You already know that. Serenia studied him with her violet eyes. Her voice, when it came, was cool and calm. Yes, the council has spoken much of you. A human who defeats armies with cleverness. A warrior who does not fight like the rest. Her tone carried neither admiration nor scorn, simply observation. Elias nodded. And you, Serenia of House? Talon, was it? What does that mean exactly? For the first time her expression shifted slightly, her pride flickering in her gaze. It means I am of a noble house. My people are diplomats, scholars, advisors. We guide the Serendri fleets and we keep our traditions alive. And now you are my companion? Elias asked carefully. Her lips curved slightly, not in a smile, but in something sharper. So the council says. Elias frowned. He had expected gratitude or perhaps shyness. Instead, he saw resistance. I want to make something clear, he said slowly. I don't believe in owning people. If you were forced into this, say so, and I'll find a way to— You misunderstand, she interrupted, her voice firm. I was not forced. When the council commands, a daughter of Talon obeys. But that does not mean I am pleased. To be granted as a prize is not an honor to me, it is uncomfortable. Elias nodded, understanding. Then we agree on that. I didn't ask for this either. But if we must walk this path, then let it be as equals. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if testing him. Equals? Few among the noble houses would speak. So? I'm not from the noble houses, Elias said simply. I'm from Earth. We don't stand on ceremony the way you do. We survive together, fight together, that's all I know. There was silence again, but it was different now. Less tense, more thoughtful. Life together begins. The days that followed were strange. Serenia was assigned quarters near Elias, and wherever he went, she was expected to appear at his side. Many aliens watched with curiosity, whispering about the unusual pairing. Elias treated her with respect, not command. He invited her to sit at the strategy table, asked for her opinion during briefings, and never once ordered her to act. This confused the other officers who were used to companions being silent symbols, not active voices. At first, Serenia kept her distance. She remained formal, answering questions but offering little else. Yet she watched Elias carefully. She saw how he treated every soldier, no matter their species, with fairness. She saw how he spoke plainly, without arrogance, even to alien lords. And slowly, her guarded walls began to shift. One evening, as they studied maps of the war front, Sirenia finally spoke more openly. "You are different from the others," she said softly. Elias looked up. "Different how?" "You refuse to play their games. The noble houses speak in riddles and diplomacy and tradition. But you are direct, honest. It is strange." "Strange good or strange bad?" Elias asked with a faint smile. For the first time her lips curved in something close to a real smile. "Strange, refreshing, tension in the council. Not everyone approved of their growing closeness. Among the coalition leaders, whispers turned to unease. The human treats her, not as companion but as partner," one alien lord muttered. "He insults our traditions," another agreed. "What message does this send? That our ways are meaningless?" But others saw promise. "Perhaps it is time traditions evolve," said one younger council member. "Perhaps this is the meaning of unity." Sirenia herself felt the weight of these expectations. Her own house sent her messages filled with subtle warnings. "Remember who you are. Do not forget your duty." It troubled her. But when she looked at Elias, this human who fought not for glory but because it was right, she wondered if duty meant something different than she had been taught. Small Moments Life aboard the Coalition flagship gave Elias and Sirenia time to learn about each other. She told him of the Serendri homeworld, where oceans glowed at night and cities floated on crystal towers. He listened with interest, imagining a world so different from his own. In return, he spoke of Earth, of forests that stretched for miles, of rain falling on rooftops, of the way sunlight warmed the skin after a long winter. She listened in silence, her eyes softening as if trying to picture it. They were small conversations, but in them, a quiet bond began to form. Not forced by council decree, not bound by tradition, but built slowly, choice by choice. Closing of Part 2 still, challenges, loomed. Sirenia's pride and Elias's plain honesty often clashed. At times they argued fiercely, she bound by her people's ways, he unwilling to bend to them. But even in conflict they learned. And though Sirenia had entered this bond unwilling, she began to see that Elias Varen was not like other men. He was not a master, nor a commander of her fate. He was something rarer, an equal who sought respect, not obedience. It was a beginning neither of them had expected. The soldier and the alien woman, two lives bound by tradition, but walking a new path of their own choosing. The war would test them, the council would question them, and enemies, jealous and fearful, would rise against them. But for now, on the quiet deck of the flagship, their journey as unlikely companions had begun. The Coalition War Council chamber was alive with tension. Holomaps glowed in the air, showing red waves of Karik's fleets pushing against thin blue lines of defense. Commanders from across the galaxy spoke in urgent voices, their tones sharp with fear and pride. Elias Varen stood at the edge of the table, arms crossed, listening. Sirenia stood beside him, tall and calm, her violet eyes flicking over the maps. To most in the room, she was still his companion. To Elias, she was a partner. The generals debated endlessly. Some wanted to withdraw, some wanted to make a costly direct strike. But as Elias listened, he realized they were falling into the same trap the Kariks always set, predictable moves. He leaned closer to Sirenia. "They're thinking in straight lines," he muttered. "That's what the Kariks want." Sirenia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, they are bound by tradition. The Kariks know how the council reacts, but if we break the pattern..." She glanced at Elias, a spark in her eyes. "We might turn the war." For a moment, they shared a silent understanding. Then Elias stepped forward, breaking the argument at the table. "You'll lose if you keep this up," he said bluntly. The alien generals turned to him, some with disdain. "Human, this is not your place," hissed a scaled Thryn commander. Elias didn't
flinch.
"Maybe not, but I've fought them face to face. I've watched how they move, how they think. They're expecting you to play safe. They want you to argue until it's too late." We need to strike where they least expect it. The room buzzed, with murmurs. One of the Surrendry lords sneered. And where do you suggest we strike, Captain? Elias glanced at Serenia. She took a step forward, her calm voice cutting through the noise. The supply hubs. The Carix lines are long. Their soldiers fight without pause, but their fuel, their food, their machines, all depend on the hubs hidden behind the front. Strike there and the armies will wither. The hall fell silent. For a noble daughter to support a human so openly was shocking. But Elias only gave a small nod. Exactly. Cut off the roots, and the tree falls. Some scoffed, others argued, but the council could not deny the logic. Finally, after hours of heated debate, the council agreed. Elias and Serenia were given command of a mixed force, tasked with leading the first deep strike into enemy territory. The TU. Mission begins. The fleet was small. Just 5 ships carrying human soldiers, Surrendry scouts, Vurok shock troops, and a unit of Thrin engineers. Each alien looked at Elias with cautious curiosity. Some doubted him, others resented him, but all knew of his victory at Telvaris. Serenia moved among them with natural grace, speaking calmly, learning their names, listening to their doubts. At first, many of the alien warriors ignored her, thinking she was only there as a companion, but she surprised them. She corrected tactical errors in their training drills, suggested efficient routes through space, and even calmed disputes between rival groups. Elias noticed how the soldiers began to look at her differently, not as a symbol, but as a leader in her own right. At night, when the fleet drifted in the silent dark of space, Elias and Serenia studied maps together. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Elias asked one evening, watching as she traced enemy supply routes with precision. Serenia tilted her head slightly. "My house has always been skilled in diplomacy and strategy. I was trained from a young age to see patterns others do not." Elias leaned back. "So why give you to me? Someone with skills like yours belongs on the council, not as a companion." Her expression darkened for a moment. "Perhaps that is why. My voice was too direct, too bold for the elder lords. To send me away under the guise of honor was a way to silence me." Elias stared at her, realizing the truth. She was not just a gift, she had been exiled in elegance. He gave a small grin. "Then their mistake is my luck." For the first time she laughed softly, the sound like a ripple of water. Behind enemy lines, the strike fleet entered Carix territory under the cover of asteroid fields and nebula storms. It was dangerous, uncharted space, and more than once there, ships barely escaped patrols. The crew grew tense, but Elias kept their spirits alive. He walked the decks, sharing food with soldiers, telling old Earth war stories of impossible victories. Serenia watched with quiet fascination. "You lead, not with fear," she said one night, "but with presence. They follow because they feel you are among them, not above them." Elias shrugged. "I don't know how to lead any other way." When they finally reached the supply hub, a massive orbital station bristling with defenses, the fleet knew the risk. A frontal assault would be suicide. Serenia spread the map before them. "We cannot win by strength, but if we strike the energy cores here, here, and here," she pointed, "the entire station will collapse." Elias studied it, then added, "And while they panic, we escape through the debris field. Risky, but it gives us a chance." The plan was set. The battle. The strike began at dawn cycle. Surrendry scouts slipped through vents and disabled alarms. Thrin engineers planted charges deep inside the station's structure. The Vurok led brutal close-quarters fights to hold corridors, their roars shaking the metal walls. Elias fought at the front, rifle in hand, moving from squad to squad, shouting orders, dragging wounded to safety. Serenia, though not a soldier, stood in the command room, directing the teams with calm authority. Her voice guided them like steady light through chaos. When the charges blew, the station shook violently. Flames tore through its halls and the energy cores began to overload. "Pull back!" Elias shouted into his comm. Everyone to the ships! The soldiers ran, chased by collapsing corridors and enemy fire. Elias was the last to leave, covering the retreat until Serenya's voice reached him. Captain, enough. If you fall, the mission is lost. He barely made it onto the final shuttle as the station exploded behind them. A starburst of fire in the void. A new reputation. The victory sent shockwaves through the warfront. For the first time, the Karik's armies faltered. Their supply lines cut. The coalition hailed the mission as a turning point. But more than the destruction of the hub, it was the way it was done that stirred whispers. A human and his alien companion, fighting not as master and servant but as partners leading side by side. Some called it dangerous, others called it inspiring. In the barracks, soldiers spoke with pride. "The human fights like one of us," said a Vurok warrior. "And the Serendri woman, her mind is as sharp as a blade," added a Thrin engineer. Elias and Serenya were no longer seen as an odd pairing. They were becoming something more, a symbol of a new kind of unity. Quiet conversations, yet in private. Both felt the weight of expectation. One evening, as the fleet drifted safely back toward Coalition space, Elias sat with Serenya in the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, silent witnesses to their journey. "You've changed things," Elias said quietly. Serenya raised an eyebrow. "We have changed things," he smiled. "Fair enough, but you know the council won't like it. They gave you to me as a companion, not as a commander. The more you stand beside me, the more they'll see us as a threat." Her gaze was steady, her voice calm. "Then let them see. I was born to serve my people. But perhaps service means more than obeying tradition. Perhaps it means shaping a new path." Elias studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we'll walk it together." Closing of Part 3, the war was far from over. The Kariks would strike back with fury, and jealous voices within the coalition would whisper against them. But for now, the soldier and the alien woman had found strength in each other. Their bond was no longer just a tradition forced upon them. It was an alliance forged in fire, in trust, and in choice. Elias and Serenya, human and Serendri, were no longer just companions. They were partners in war, and perhaps in something greater that neither yet dared to name. The galaxy was watching, and the story of their alliance was only beginning to unfold. The fleet returned to Coalition space as heroes. Their mission against the Karik supply hub had been a complete success, and across the front lines soldiers spoke of the human and his alien partner who fought side by side. But where the Upe, common warriors praised them, the noble houses whispered with unease. To the old families, the bond between Elias and Serenya was dangerous. A human captain, an outsider, had been raised to glory. A Serendri noble daughter, given as a companion, now stood not as a symbol but as a commander. Together they challenged tradition, and for some, that was unforgivable. Shadows of envy. The Coalition Council chamber looked the same as always, with its tall banners and glowing maps. But the air was colder now. Elias stood at the center, Serenya at his side. "The mission succeeded," Elias said firmly, pointing to the shifting lines of the warfront. "The Kariks are retreating from 3 systems. We must press the attack before they recover." Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some agreed, but others frowned. A Vurok lord leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling. "Bravery does not make you wise, human. You struck one supply hub. That does not make you a strategist of the war." Serenya stepped forward, her voice calm, but sharp. "It was not only one strike. Their chain of support is weaker now, and other hubs are vulnerable. If we continue, we can collapse their line entirely." The Lord sneered. "And you, noble daughter, forget your place. You were sent, as companion, not as general." The insult hung in the air. Elias clenched his fist but kept his tone steady. "If she speaks sense, it should not matter what her title is. Judge the idea, not the person." His words only deepened the scowls of some leaders. When the meeting ended, Serenya walked beside him in silence. Finally, she spoke softly. They will not forgive us, Elias. They see us as a threat to the order they built. Then we'll prove them wrong, Elias said simply, but even he felt the weight of what was coming. The mission of betrayal. Soon after, Elias and Serenia were assigned a new task. They were to escort a convoy of supplies through a quiet region near the star Alvarin. It seemed almost too simple compared to their last mission. Elias had doubts from the start. Why send us on escort duty after what we just achieved? He asked Serenia as they prepared the fleet. Perhaps they wished to keep us away from the front, she answered. But there was unease in her violet eyes. The convoy moved smoothly at first, drifting through empty space. But on the third day, without warning, a fleet of Carrick's warships emerged from the shadows of a nebula. The ambush was perfect. Shields up! Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Elias shouted as enemy fire tore into the lead freighter. The Carrick ships pressed hard, far, too many for what should have been a quiet sector. It was no accident. They knew we'd be here, Serenia said grimly. This was planned. The coalition escorts fought desperately, but one by one ships fell. Finally, Elias gave the order. Retreat, scatter and run, save who you can. His own ship was struck, systems failing. He and Serenia were thrown to the floor as alarms blared. They were captured, captive together. The Carricks held them in a dark chamber aboard a massive warship. Chains bound their hands, though neither Elias nor Serenia gave their captors the satisfaction of despair. They wanted us out of the way, Elias said quietly. Someone on the council betrayed us. Serenia nodded, her face calm but her voice edged with steel. Yes, and now they will use this against us. They will claim we failed, that we broke tradition, that we are unworthy. Despite the situation, Elias gave a faint smile. At least I'm not alone in this mess. She looked at him for a long moment. Nor am I. They did not stay captives for long. A coalition fleet soon attacked, forcing the Carricks to retreat. Elias and Serenia were rescued, but the damage was already done. The trial back in the Great Hall, Elias and Serenia were not greeted as heroes but as accused. The council gathered, their faces cold. You failed your mission, declared a Thrin elder. A convoy destroyed, lives lost. Your reckless leadership is to blame. Elias stepped forward, anger in his eyes. It was a trap. The Carricks knew we would be there. Someone told them. The elder hissed. You dare accuse the council? Another voice, a Vurok lord, thundered. Worse still, this human treats his companion not as gift but as equal. He dishonors our traditions, and she, he pointed at Serenia, betrays her house by standing at his side as if she were a commander. Serenia's chin lifted proudly. If wisdom is betrayal, then I stand guilty, but I will not apologize for speaking truth. The chamber roared with outrage. Finally, the High Elder raised her hand for silence. Elias Varen of Earth, Serenia, of House Talon, you stand accused of dishonoring the ancient ways. Speak now in your defense. Elias's defense. The hall was silent as Elias stepped forward. His voice carried not with anger but with steady strength. I did not come here to insult your traditions. I came here to fight for the coalition, to stand against the Carricks who would burn all our worlds. On Telvaris we were outnumbered 6-1. We survived because we fought together. Not because one commanded and the other obeyed, but because we trusted each other. He turned slowly, looking at the gathered leaders. You speak of honor, but what honor is there in treating an ally as a possession? What strength is there in silence when wisdom could save lives? I do not see Serenia as gift or servant. I see her as partner, and together we have done what others could not. Some faces hardened, others softened. The chamber was divided. Serenia stepped beside him then, her voice clear and calm. He speaks truth. I was sent as companion, but I chose to stand as his equal. Not because of defiance, but because of respect. And if that is crime, then I accept the punishment. Judgment, the council whispered among themselves for a long time. Finally, the High Elder spoke. Their actions challenge our ways, but their victories cannot be denied. To punish them as traitors would dishonor the lives they have saved. A pause. The Council will allow them to live, but their bond is watched with suspicion. Let the galaxy judge, in time, whether their path is wisdom or folly. Relief and tension mingled in the chamber. It was not victory, but it was survival. Quiet. After the storm later, when the hall was empty and only the two of them remained, Elias exhaled slowly. That could have gone worse. Serenia gave a faint smile, though her eyes still held weight. We live. That is something. But the Council will not forget. Every step from now on will be harder. Elias nodded. Then we'll take those steps together. For the first time, Serenia's expression softened fully. Yes. Together. Closing of Part 4, the trial had not broken them. If anything, it had strengthened their bond. They were no longer simply soldier and companion. They were partners who had faced betrayal, captivity, and judgment side by side. The Council's eyes were upon them. Enemies plotted in shadows. The Carricks prepared their next great strike, but Elias and Serenia knew one thing. Whatever came, they would stand together, not by tradition but by choice. The war was entering its darkest days, and the true test of their alliance was still to come. The galaxy was changing. After the trial, whispers of Elias Varin and Serenia of House Talon had spread like wildfire. Some called them dangerous, some extraordinary, but all agreed that the human soldier and the Serendri noblewoman had rewritten the rules of the coalition. Elias stood on the observation deck of the flagship, staring at the swirling blue and violet of a distant nebula. Beside him, Serenia leaned against the railing, silent. This war will not wait for us to feel ready, Elias said quietly. The Carricks are regrouping, and I fear some among the Council still wish to see us fail. Serenia's eyes reflected the nebula's light. Then we must act not for their approval but for the survival of the coalition. We have the knowledge, the skills, and the unity to lead. That is what matters. Elias nodded. Together. A new strategy. The Carricks, though wounded from prior defeats, were resilient. Their fleet had grown stronger, and they struck at the border systems with fury. Many coalition worlds faced bombardment, their defenses crumbling under coordinated attacks. Elias and Serenia were given command of the Central Strike Force, a bold but risky decision that some council members still opposed. In the strategy room, they pored over holomaps. Every move the Carricks could make they anticipated. Attack their fleet from multiple directions, Elias said. Not head-on. We force them to divide their strength. Serenia added. And we strike at supply chains, simultaneously. Each hub we destroy delays reinforcements, making their front lines weaker. A young Serendri officer looked at them, amazed. You think like two minds, but act as one. It's inspiring. Elias smiled faintly. We learn from each other. That is all. The plan was risky. If even one part failed, the fleet could be lost. But Elias and Serenia had confidence, not in luck, but in teamwork, strategy, and trust. The battle for Arvinos. The planet Arvinos was the first target. The Carricks had built a defensive station above its orbit, guarded by dozens of warships. Elias's mixed fleet approached under the shadow of asteroid fields. Ships drifted silently, shields hidden, engines muted. Serenia coordinated the strike teams with calm precision. She directed Serendri scouts to disable sensors, Thrin engineers to sabotage energy cores, and Vurok shock troops to board enemy ships at precise moments. Elias led the human soldiers in daring maneuvers, drawing the enemy's attention while other units struck critical points. The Carricks, confident in their strength, were caught off guard. Explosions erupted across the station as sabotage spread. Ships were disabled faster than the enemy could react. Chaos became their ally. During the battle, Elias and Serenia remained in constant communication. Enemy reinforcement arriving from Sector 7, a lieutenant reported. Lead them toward the debris field, Elias said, glancing at Serenia. Calculated risk, she replied. They will lose their advantage if we split their force. The plan worked perfectly. Carrick's ships collided with debris, some fleeing in confusion. Arvinos was secured with minimal coalition losses. Across the galaxy, news of the victory spread. The Carricks realized that the human captain and his companion were no ordinary commanders. They were innovators, unpredictable, and brilliant. The council reacts back at the council. Old lords argued over the unprecedented victories. This cannot continue, a Vorok elder growled. A human and a noblewoman are changing the balance of power. But the victories are undeniable, countered a younger Serendri lord. Perhaps this is the future. Perhaps the old traditions need to evolve. Elias and Serenia, aware of the tension, did not seek approval. They understood that change would be slow, and that some would resist it until it was too late. Serenia whispered to Elias, "They fear what we show them. That strength comes not from rigid rules, but from trust and partnership." Elias nodded. "And that's fine. Let them fear it. We only need to focus on the war." Lessons in unity. As their campaigns continued, Elias and Serenia demonstrated more than military skill. They showed the coalition that humans could contribute more than courage. They could offer ingenuity, adaptability, and compassion. Serendri nobles watched as their companions could be more than symbols. Vorok warriors saw that leadership was not only strength. Thrin engineers realized that clever planning could save lives far more than raw power. Elias, ever humble, deflected praise. "We only survive if we trust each other. That is all." Serenia, equally modest, added, "And we only succeed if we listen as much as we act." The soldiers grew loyal not because of tradition, but because they respected the example Elias and Serenia set. A personal moment. After weeks of battles, the flagship drifted in quiet space near a peaceful planet. Stars glittered in the sky like scattered diamonds. Elias and Serenia stood on the observation deck looking out. "You've changed my life," Elias said softly. Serenia's violet eyes met his. "And you've changed mine. I never thought being a companion could mean this," he smiled faintly. "You mean equality?" She laughed quietly. "Yes, and trust, and something more perhaps. But that can wait until the war is over." Elias placed a hand near hers, close enough to touch, but not pressing. "We'll face the war together first, then we'll see." She nodded. Together. The turning point. The final campaign against the Carricks approached. Intelligence showed the enemy massing near the system of Neareth, preparing to strike at the heart of the coalition. Elias and Serenia were assigned command of the Central Assault Fleet. Their plan was bold: divide the enemy fleet, destroy their command ships, and liberate 3 key worlds simultaneously. Many doubted the feasibility, but Elias's calm confidence and Serenia's precise guidance inspired loyalty and courage. The battle was long and fierce. Explosions lit the void, ships collided, and soldiers fought heroically. Elias and Serenia coordinated every move, adapting instantly as the enemy responded. By the end, the Carricks were defeated decisively. The coalition celebrated a turning point that would mark the beginning of the end of the war. Recognition and respect. After the final victory, the council convened. Again. This time, there was no trial, no whispered criticisms. Captain Elias Varin, the High Elder, said, her voice calm but proud. "You have done what many thought impossible. You have shown the galaxy that courage, intelligence, and trust are stronger than tradition alone. And you, Serenia of House Talon, have proven that loyalty and wisdom can shape the course of empires." The chamber erupted in applause. Aliens of all races stood and cheered. Elias looked at Serenia. "We did this together." She smiled, her pride evident. "Yes, together. A new path. With the war ending, a new era began." The coalition began to adopt ideas inspired by Elias and Serenia's partnership. Companions were no longer symbols alone. They could be advisors, partners, and leaders. Human soldiers earned greater respect among the alien races. And trust, unity, and ingenuity became as valued as strength and rank. Elias and Serenia continued to serve, guiding fleets, advising leaders, and training soldiers. They were no longer outsiders or curiosities. They were recognized as equals, as innovators, and as symbols of hope for the galaxy. At night, they walked the decks together, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories of home, sometimes planning for future missions. They had become more than soldier and companion. They were friends, partners, and perhaps something more yet unnamed. Closing, the galaxy had changed. The old ways of rigid tradition were giving way to new ideas of partnership, trust, and respect. And at the heart of this change were two individuals, a human soldier and an alien noblewoman, who chose to walk together side by side in equality and courage. Their story was no longer about one battle or one reward. It was about what could be achieved when understanding and trust bridged the gaps between worlds. And though the future was uncertain, Elias and Serenia faced it with the same courage they had shown on countless battlefields. Together, they stepped into a new path, a path of unity, hope, and endless possibility.